Hey, it's Drybear. Coming very soon on February 7th, the next reset for Dragonflight. We're getting some pretty serious class tuning and balance changes. So that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to go through all the changes listed. As always, if you have any questions or comments for me, you'll find me live every day on twitch.tv/Drybear. Come by and say hi. Here we are, the official post for this. They actually originally posted less, and I thought they were going to put it live just right off the bat, but they decided to hold off, make the list bigger, which I wasn't expecting, and then they're going to be pushing this live next week instead of when they posted this, which was earlier the week. So let's go through the changes. Some of these are pretty insane. Starting with Death Knight, Blood DK. This doesn't really directly affect their tankiness. I think they have been consistently in the top two. They've been, pretty close to tying with Protection Warriors all throughout the seasons. If you're wondering about tank performance, I've been doing tank rankings based on their performance and all PvE content every week since the launch of Season 1. So you can go back and watch those videos to see how Blood DKs have scaled, but they've been doing exceptionally well. These changes specifically more are to target their damage output. Though they may be super tanky, they have great self-healing, the best self-healing out of any tank in the game. They are getting some damage buffs, surprisingly. Heart strike damage increased by 15%. This one, remember, this gets scaled because they can make this cleave if they're standing in their death and decay. Blood plague damage up by 15%. This ends up being a pretty large chunk of their overall damage parse. So that's gonna be really nice. Blood boil damage, which applies blood plague. So you'll have blood boil damage going up 15%. Death and decay damage going up 20%. This one didn't end up being too much, but which is why it's being buffed more than the others. But it's nice to have some extra damage on Death and Decay. Shattering Bone damage going up 5%. Sanguine Ground damage, while inside Death and Decay, increased to 6% instead of 5%. So a little 1% increase there. So they're trying to target the damage output for Blood DKs. This will help them clear higher Mythic Plus keys. I mean, we started to see like Brewmasters and Brewmasters and Prop Paladins push higher keys just because they were a little bit more utilitarian and they had good damage, and DKs were kind of falling behind on damage, though they were still being brought in some of the best content overall. So we're getting a lot of crazy Blood DK damage. Frost DK, they started out the season decent, and then they've just been slipping ever since, falling lower and lower on the list. And on the recent numbers after 10.0.5, they were quite low, miserably low, actually. So this is very welcome. If you're a Frost DK, I'm sure you're going to be happy about this. Unleashed Frenzy duration increased to 10 seconds. This just makes the rotation a lot cleaner and more enjoyable. Cleaving Strikes Obliterate now hits 2 additional targets, so an extra cleave shot for that. That should actually help, I think, on Council in Raid as well. Frostweaver damage increased by 15%. That'll just bring the whole baseline up. Glacial Advance damage increased by 20%. Nice burst potential. Frost Strike damage, 10%. Good runic power spending. Frostwhelp's aid damage increased by double, 100% more. And then Frost Scythe damage increased by 35%. So we'll see. I'll be happy to check in at the end of next week after the reset to see where the DKs end up after this, but a lot of damage increase. You notice how they didn't really touch Unholy. Unholy is still doing really well. Though last week they didn't do as well in Mythic Plus. That could have just been the affixes for last week. So we'll see how they stack up once I do those numbers. But in general, this is really nice. This is kind of encouraging. Next, for Druid Guardian, they almost pushed this live, but they ended up holding back on it. These are the things they're changing for Guardian. Armor from Ironfur increased by 20%. This is something that I had been asking for Guardian Druid, for Bear Druid. I feel like they're just innate tankiness from their baseline abilities just wasn't enough, and they end up having to rely a lot on their burst healing, on being able to proc more and just use all their self mitigations, whereas like they need to be more baseline tanky. Adding armor to Ironfur is nice because so here's kind of the meta on that, right? It's not, Ironfur can't be as good as something like Shield of the Righteous because Ironfur stacks. It can, especially when you're inside of Incarn or Berserk, you can get insanely high stacks of Ironfur. So they don't want it to be as comparable by that, to like a shield block or something like that. But at base, especially if you're trying to use more mauls and damage to keep up with other tanks in Mythic Plus where you need to do damage, it's nice to be able to rely on less stacks of Iron Fur and on be able to do more offensive things without using all your rage on Iron Fur. So 20% armor on there. Reinforced Fur now increases armor from Iron Fur by 15% and bark skin damage reduction by 10%, up from what its previous value, which is about double from what it was before. Ursoc's Fury now grants an absorb shield based on 50% damage dealt by Thrash and Maul, up from 30%. I think this one was probably just underperforming in general. The absorb shield was really nice, but I think it just didn't do enough. So we'll see if 50% of damage dealt by Thrash and Maul is enough, up from 30%. Reinvigoration's Frenzy Regeneration cooldown reduction increased to 40% from 30%. Layered main chance to proc increased by double from 510 to 1020. This one definitely underperforming. Then the new one that they added, Lunar Beam, which was laughable. I guess they were just trying to be cautious on its rollout so it didn't, break things. But boy, was it bad. Lunar Beam healing increased by 130%. So over double, 130% better healing, and the cooldown is reduced to 1 minute. So I think they realized how bad it was. We'll see if it gets picked up and utilized better here. It might be nice for big pulls. I don't know, but we'll see. Developers notes, we're keeping a close eye on variances in survivability across the tank specializations. Guardians are the squishiest right now. These changes are intended to alleviate some difficulties Guardian Druids have been experiencing with certain damage types, physical, as well as targeting some underperforming talents which were not delivering meaningful survivability improvements. There's actually situations where, on like Broodkeeper, it was very hard for Bear Druid to tank Broodkeeper because she did so much physical damage, and you basically had to have constant, near perfect rage management with several stacks of Iron Fur up at all times in order to do it. It's certainly doable. I did it on my Bear Druid, but compared to all the other tanks, it was significantly harder. So it's nice to have them recognize that. Restoration Druid. All healing reduced by 3% in PvE only. So we're at that point. We were wondering, with Resto Druid and Preservation Evoker dominating the healing charts ever since the start for the last 8 weeks, what was going to happen? Are they going to try to bring other healers up? They've been buffing other healers pretty consistently. Disc Priest got some buffs, although I think they need a lot more buffs than what they've got. Mistweaver definitely, Resto Shaman definitely. Only Paladin I would say is in a good spot, and then Evoker, Restoration Druid have always just been insanely good. But they've decided that now's the time for the nerfs. So Restoration Druid, all healing reduced by 3% across the board in PvE. Preservation Evoker got hit even harder, all healing reduced by 5%. That's all of their healing, all abilities, all output, all everything. Pretty insane, pretty heavy. We'll see what this does to the healers' distribution, but the gap between Resto Druid and Preservation Druid versus the rest of the healing crew was significant. So I think it was probably time to do something like this. Hunter fell off super hard with 10.0.5. Marksmanship held on for the longest, but with the loss of double tap and some other changes, they fell down as well. Survival last week was the lowest of all the DPS specs in all PvE categories. So across the board, all Hunter specs are getting a damage dealt for the Hunter and their pet by 5%. So all damage for Hunters going up 5% for all specializations on Tuesday on the reset. Monk, Mistweaver, all healing increased by 3%. So across the board, all healing increased. On top of that, Vivify healing increased by 5%. This is nice because Vivify is very mana intensive. You can go very easily by spamming it, especially if you're the caster build. So it's nice to be able to get more healing out of that. Clouded Focus, and by the way, this only affects Mistweaver, never mind. Clouded Focus now increases healing and decreases mana cost by 20% for Enveloping Mist and Vivify. Peaceful Mending now increases the healing of Enveloping Mist and Renewing Mist by 2550, up from 1530. Spinning Crane Kick damage increased by 15%. This will help not only Mistweavers that are casting help clear Mythic Plus when they need to do damage. It's just going to give them more damage in general. But obviously this does help Fist Weaving as well. And then the hybrid builds that have Fist Weaving casting, they'll be able to get some more healing out of Spinning Crane Kick, which is cool. Ancient Concordance increases the chance for Rising Sun Kick to reset by 10%, up from 6%. Rising Sun Kick still costs a lot of mana, especially for Fistweavers. And so it's nice to be able to have this, have the higher chance of, so when you're doing the fist weaving and you're in the right place and you're doing the right thing, then you have a higher chance of resetting Sun Kick, which is really good. It means that you'll get more burst healing, and it makes the fist weaving a little bit more viable, especially in Mythic Plus. Lesson of Doubt increases healing and damage by up to 40% from 35%. This is on the new Shadowlands gift, and just wasn't doing enough, so it got a little oomph increase there. Paladin Protection, Prot Pally. Avenger Shield damage increased by 10%. This gives them a little of AoE potential as well, which is really nice. And then in 10.0.7, they're looking to rework one of their single target Avenger Shield talents, which is going to be pretty cool. Blessed Hammer, Hammer of the Righteous, Crusader Strike, which is all your Crusader Strike modifiers and replacements. All of those versions, the damage is going to be increased by 30%. I think this is great for Prot. Blessed Hammer is really just to generate holy power. It doesn't really do all that much damage, and that's why a 30% I think is definitely worthwhile. And then Hammer of Wrath going up 15%. All of these together will help threat generation on pull as well, especially with Divine Toll on top of this. It gives you a little more damage on baseline. There were some times where Prot Paladins would struggle to keep aggro when against like a Prot Warrior or like a Brewmaster that can just pump damage. Hammer of Wrath damage going up 15% is going to be pretty nice as well. Holy Priest. I'm still confused with the situation that Disc Priest is in right now, especially in Raid. I'm not sure why they keep pumping Holy Priest. I was kind of shocked by it, but the last time I felt like Holy Priest was doing fine, but maybe just on average just not enough. But all healing increased by 3%. So we'll see kind of how that affects it. I would say Disc is probably doing fine in Mythic Plus. Maybe needs a little bit of love, but they're doing quite well in Mythic Plus. And they're doing better in Raid, but I think they still need a little bit of love. Holy getting the love this time around though. Shaman, Healing Surge, healing increased by 10%. This will affect all specializations. So if you're running any specialization that casts Healing Surge will get a 10% increase. Chain Heal healing increased by 10%. And remember, there is more Chain Heal changes coming for 10.0.5. I can put the 10.0.7 patch notes review video in the description if you wanted to go check that out. I went through all the changes there. They're doing a lot with chain healing for Resto Shaman. And then for Restoration Specialization specifically, Healing Wave, healing increased by 10%. This will affect your Primordial Wave, which is pretty cool. Healing Rain, healing increased by 10%. This is nice. And then Overflowing Shores, which is the talent that makes Healing Rain do an instant heal. And this is actually being separated from Acid Rain in the next patch as well, the next major content update. So this can be taken with Acid Rain, which is pretty cool. So more Resto Shaman buffs, Mistweaver buffs, Holy Priest buffs, and then they're nerfing Preservation and Restoration Druid. So there you go. Yeah. Warlock, still overall, I would say still overall underperforming. I was hoping to see Affliction on here, but just not. There you go. Inquisitor's Gaze, Fell Barrage, damage increased 35%. This just it wasn't they reworked how this worked, how this like functioned, and it ended up being a lot less frequent and a lot less controllable. So the damage coming up, I think, is just to balance out to what it was before they reworked it. Summon Soulkeeper also got reworked, and the damage is going to go up 35%. So both of these talent choices for Warlock in the class tree are going up 35%. Inquisitor's Gaze and Summon Soulkeeper are not contributing to the Warlock damage profile as much as we'd like, especially for something that's at the bottom of their class tree. After this adjustment, we'll continue to watch Warlock's overall performance, and we will make further adjustments if needed. So, yeah, I think in general, Destruction's doing better. Demonology and Destruction doing better in Mythic Plus after all the buffs they've gotten over the last 2 months, but they're still struggling a lot in Raid. Affliction is too, but I think in general they're just having trouble keeping up with the damage output. So for Destruction, Soulfire damage increased by 20%, Incinerate damage by 5%. This is one of the core abilities. So this will these two changes, I actually think these are great. This should help their non-conditional damage just go up and kind of raise the tide for Destruction, which will be really nice. Demonology Wild Imp damage increased by 15%, and then Vile Fiend increased by 30%. We feel that both Destruction and Demonology could use some improvements to their overall contribution in single target situations. Yes. These adjustments are specifically targeting talents that we feel could be more competitive, while also putting additional power into rotational spells. I think this is the best place to start. Bring up the baseline, then see if the specific things need to be adjusted as well. Because they're just so far behind it, it doesn't really make much sense to kind of breadcrumb it too hard. Player versus player items. Neltharax, Enemy of the Sky, now grants 1% attack speed in PvP. Attack speed in PvP from 5%. So super nerf to this item. Demon Hunter, Havoc, Restless Hunter, damage bonus for next Blade Dance Death Sweep, reduced by 40% in PvP combat. We've continued to see the potential burst provided by Restless Hunter much higher than we would like, especially in combination with Essence Break and the Hunt. They did some pretty big Havoc nerfs to burst potential in PvP, and I guess they're still not happy with where they're at. So the Restless Hunter talent is getting reduced to try and bring that closer together. Guardian, Frenzied Regeneration is now 50% effective in PvP combat from 62 because of the change that they got above for reinvigoration. So they're just trying to balance that out. I haven't done the math to see if that's equivalent, but it sounds about equivalent. Evoker, Living Flame, healing increased by 30% in PvP combat. The more healing in Evoker, remember, Evoker's getting a 5% healing nerf across the board. And that affects PvP, so they're going to bring up select abilities to try and balance off. Yes, they mentioned it here. This is intended to offset the above noted game-wide 5% healing reduction by targeting abilities that we would like to see more prominent. Makes sense. Bring the base down and then focus on abilities that you want to be more impactful. So 5% overall. Then Living Flame, which is your casted heal, 30% more. Verdant Embrace, which is your dash, that's a big chunk healing, 20% more. Oppressing Roar increases the duration of incoming crowd control by 30% instead of 20 for PvP. Pretty cool. Hunter, Beast Mastery, Stormwing, Harriers, Camouflage, 4-piece now, increases the damage of your next kill command by 10% in PvP, down from 20%. They're just trying to offset the 5% that they're all getting. And then Marksmanship, let's see, with the removal of double tap. So I think they removed double tap just because they don't like the burst potential that Marksman had in PvP. Marksmanship Hunter damage has been lower than we'd like to see, so we're increasing several main rotation abilities while decreasing Unerring Vision with the goal of higher sustained damage. So Rapid Fire goes up 15% in PvP, Aim Shot 15%, Chimera Shot 30%, Unerring Vision, Critical Strike damage bonus effectiveness reduced by 50% in PvP. So they're going 5% overall damage increase. They lost double tap, and then they're basically all of their core abilities for PvP for just dealing regular rotational damage are going up. So we'll see how that affects them overall. Monk, Mistweaver, Healing Sphere now triggers the Dispel backlash effects from Unstable Affliction. No! I hate this change. Oh my God. Healing Sphere was like, I feel like this is such a fun talent for classes to have. So if you didn't know this, you could talent into this for PvP only. You put a sphere on the ground. If your teammates walk over it or you walk over it, it dispels, basically cleanses you and heals you. And this was basically you would only talent into this against Afflocks because you could dispel Unstable Affliction. And since the sphere, the orb is dispelling it, the kickback from from UA wouldn't hit anyone. So it was a super nice counter, and it felt like you were super awesome for for having like, okay, I see an Afflock, I'm gonna switch talents, I'm ready for this. I'm coordinating with my team, and they pick it up. But they're making it so that the Dispel backlash effects from UA and Vampiric Touch will be triggered. I'm not sure. This doesn't say if does it affect the Mistweaver or the person that walks over the orb. And I think the challenge here is that, you know, if your teammate walks over one on accident, or it's across the map, or, you know, this there's some questions on how this functions that I would have. But they increased the healing by 320%. It still cleanses. It's not a safe cleanse in PvP, but the healing goes up by 320%. So it still gets picked as a regular healing, I'm sure. It's still a ground target. Someone has to walk over it, but I'm curious to see how this gets picked up and utilized now. This change is to have more consistency among dispel effects that are intended to require careful consideration of the risks and benefits of dispelling it. Yeah, well, I've given my opinion on that. Priest, Shadow, Psyfiend, healing reduction no longer stacks with similar effects. Finally, developers note Psyfiend healing reduction effects appear mechanically similar to others, but we're stacking with other effects and each other in a way that was not clearly communicated. So if you did like a Shadow Cleave You can do some, like, basically Shadow Priest Aflock was just so nasty. It's nice to be able to have this change here where you're not going to get, while Siphoned is up, you're not going to get extra MS, extra anti-healing, which is kind of nice. Yep, there we go. Rogue, Assassination, Vault Delver's Toolkit, 4-piece set bonus, bleed damage. Bonus reduced by 50% in PvP combat. I guess it was just too much. Wound Poison, Deathmark version. Healing reduction no longer stacks similar effects. Same thing that they're doing up here with Siphoned. So no like stacking MS with like specific conditionals based on the class. Up here mechanically similar to others, but we're stacking. Yeah. Same exact. Okay. Shaman, Restoration, damage dealt to Earth and Wall Totem caused by damage absorbed by pets is reduced by 90%. Wow. That's crazy. Earth and Wall is a very strong cooldown. One of the easiest ways to counter shamans, resto shamans, is to tab target and kill their totems. But I guess they're making that a lot harder. The intent for this adjustment is to make Earth and Wall Totem feel more impactful as a defensive ability. As we noted, it was being destroyed too quickly in scenarios where teammates have pets. Okay, so damage absorbed by pets is reduced by 90%. There you go. Warlock, Affliction UA backlash damage increased by 35%. After our recent changes to normalize UA's backlash damage, we're seeing it get dispelled frequently. Our intent is for dispelling on UA to require careful consideration. So 35% more damage on UA dispel. Terrifying. Chaos Bolt damage increased by 40% in PvP, up from 15%. So Destruction getting a little buff there for PvP. Resolved an issue that caused Bane of Havoc to deal more damage than intended to targets. And there's a bug, I guess, that was causing Havoc to deal full damage instead of the intended 60. That bug's going to get fixed. Fell Fissure, healing reduction no longer stacks with similar effects. There's that. Fell Fissure's healing reduction effects appear mechanically similar to many others, but we're stacking with other such effects in each other in a way. Yada yada. So there's another one. So they're normalizing anti-healing in PvP. I think that's pretty cool. Warrior Arms, Executioner's Precision is now 30% effective in PvP combat, down from 50. Arms got a bunch of buffs that did affect PvP. So I guess they're trying to scale down how much those are impacting PvP. Martial Prowess is now 33% effective in PvP combat, down from 50. Overpower damage increased by 20%. It's a conditional ability, so I think that's pretty cool. Slam damage increased by 40% in PvP. They keep trying to make Slam work more regularly. We've seen Mortal Strike come to represent too much of Arms Warrior's total damage in PvP. Yep. Additionally, it often results in spikier damage than we're comfortable with. So moving toward to an overall rebalance across several abilities. So MS for the debuff and slam away, my friends. So those are the changes coming to February 7th. The next reset, a bunch of big stuff in here. Let me know what your thoughts are on all this. Are they moving in the right direction? I think there's some pretty big saving graces, but this is, a long list of very intense balance changes and hot fixes and updates. So here we are. Let's go, man. It's crazy. I like it. As always, if you have any questions or comments for me, you'll find me live every day on twitch.tv/Drybear. Come by and say hi, or I'm telling everyone that your feet smell. If you enjoyed yourself today, leave a like down below. You can support me and my work on Patreon and view Patreon exclusive content, link in the description. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next one.